Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Coffee Milk Hour. We're back.
We're back.
Yeah, it's been like a week.
Longer.
Yeah, Wednesday to Wednesday. It's been a week.
Oh, I thought it was Monday. Okay.
Was it Monday?
Yeah, because
who knows?
You went away earlier.
I did, because I have things to do. I'm a very busy person. I'm Puffy.
I'm still Jerry.
And, well, are you? We're going to talk about things today that I don't really want to talk about, but it has to be discussed. We're going to talk about the Cincinnati Zoo incident, I guess.
You guessed. I mean, you really wanted to talk about this.
I really wanted to talk about it, and then I realized we shouldn't even be discussing it in the first place, but that's for a completely different reason, and I'm pissed off. The fucking 17-year-old gorilla is dead over some dumb mom and her dumb kid and just stupid humans.
I mean, it was a little bit stupid. It's a little bit of a stupid event, but I mean, the kid's not dumb.
The kid's pretty fucking dumb.
The kid is 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he doesn't really know what's going on. He can't really hold a 3-year-old accountable for being 3.
The hell I can't. Watch me.
It's not like he went in there knowing what would happen.
No, but I can hold his mother accountable for being negligent.
Maybe she was negligent. So to fill people in on what happened, on Saturday, a 3-year-old boy got through some of the barriers at the Cincinnati Zoo and fell 12 feet into the moat where Harambe, the gorilla, went over to him, dragged him repeatedly, once by the arm, once by the shirt, all over the enclosure, and at a later point was shot and killed by zookeepers in order to save the life of the kid. And since then, there has been outrage all over Facebook and regular media, social media, about whether or not the gorilla should have been shot. A lot of animal rights activists are upset that the gorilla needed to be shot. People oppose alternatives. Multiple experts have come out saying he should have been shot or he shouldn't have been shot, and there's a large debate over the entire thing. So the first question is, should he have been shot?
Fuck no. First of all, the gorilla shouldn't have been there in the first place. I fucking hate zoos. I really do. Animals do not belong caged up on display for humans to, look at and then walk past. This has been something that's bugged me ever since I was a kid. You take these animals out of their natural habitats, you put them into a place where they're on display in a stressful environment because they're constantly being viewed and harassed by, douchebag kids and shit like that. And we just expect that this will never, ever, ever happen, and then it does, and everybody's so surprised. And what makes it worse is when the animal in question, like in this circumstance, is part of an endangered species. The world, in general, tends to say, oh, well, we need to protect the endangered species and bring them back from the brink. And what do? We commit complete hypocrisy by doing what we do and putting them in zoos and putting them in cages and shit like that. Should the gorilla have been shot? No, it shouldn't have. It's as simple as that. You can trank the gorilla, and I know that experts have come out and were like, oh, well, the drug takes a few minutes to take effect, and it could have harmed the child by agitating the gorilla. But you know what? We've watched this video, and you hear all the people screaming and hollering, and you can see the gorilla negatively react to all the screaming. It's a state of panic, and it agitates the gorilla, so the gorilla drags the kid. When it's quiet, the gorilla does nothing. Why at no point in time do any of the zookeepers say, hey, you need to keep calm. If we have a calm situation, we can resolve this in a different way? No, they allowed the amping up to continue. They allowed people to stand around the entire enclosure while this whole thing was going down, and look what happened as a result. Did it need to be shot? No.
As far as zoos go and endangered species, I feel like zoos do serve a good purpose. I mean, they're educational. They show people that, hey, these animals are endangered and we need to be more aware of it. And they provide, especially endangered species, a place where they can breed and, kind of rehabilitate. There might be a better way to do it than keeping them in small spaces. But I don't think, zoos are inherently evil. If they're left in the wild, they'll be shot and poached and run off. I personally feel that in that situation, you have no choice but to shoot the gorilla. I've looked at some of the alternatives. I've tried to wrap my head around what else you could have done. But in a situation where at any given moment that gorilla can kill that child any given moment, and time is of the essence. If I'm a zookeeper or a police member, whatever it was that is in a situation where you need to make a split-second decision, and every second you wait could mean the life of this child, I feel like the child's life, unfortunately, or whatever way you see it, in my opinion, the child's life is more important than the gorilla's life, and it's important to save that kid. And if that means we have to shoot the gorilla, and unfortunately fatally, I think it has to be done.
I'm not happy about this at all. The whole thing really irritates me. Going back to what you were talking about, there are things like sanctuaries and stuff like that. Like there are buffalo in zoos, but where the buffalo, I don't know if you know this, is not on the endangered species list anymore. And that's because of the sanctuaries that are set up for it. It has nothing to do with the zoos. You can't take an animal, put it into a zoo, rehabilitate it, then put it back in the wild and expect it to survive out there. It's never going to happen. Once you're in a zoo, you're going to always be in the zoo. But that's a completely separate issue. I understand what you're saying in terms of like the safety of the child and this and that, but I mean, to me, it just goes back to, if the animals weren't there in the first place, this wouldn't have been a problem. And to me, I feel like there's more blame to be placed on the parent. You're talking about an enclosure with bars, not a cage. It was supposed to be called the Cageless Exhibit. That opened up in 1978 and didn't have a single incident until today. So almost 40 years incident-free, and then this happens to occur. And you can't sit there and tell me that the parent wasn't negligent, because every other parent with their small children since 1978 hasn't had an issue with this particular enclosure until this one kid who decided, oh, that's a 12-foot drop. Fuck it.
I'm hesitant to place blame on a parent just because I don't know the facts. I've heard that she had 6 total children with her. I'm not sure if that's true or not. That's what I've heard. If it was just her and a bunch of other little kids, then I could understand how she might lose track of one of those 6 for a second or two when he climbs in the cage. I've heard that she might have been on her cell phone. I don't know. If she was on her phone, then maybe you can claim negligence there. There's an investigation going on. I don't know what the facts are. I do know that was probably the worst moment of that mother's life, watching her child down there being dragged around by a 400-pound gorilla. And again, at any moment, that child might have died. So I'm hesitant to say it's negligence, because there's a line between negligence and an accident. If this kid was determined to get in there and all she had to do was turn quickly and look the other way, I looked up a picture online, and there's just a fence, like you said, bars, like 3 bars, but there's plenty of space in between those bars for a child his size to crawl through, and then there's a line of bushes, which are not really a fence at all, and then a 12-foot drop. So once he's through the bars, he's got to get through a bush, which is easy for any kid, and then as long as he's cool with falling 12 feet, and I don't think a 3-year-old is really aware of the dangers of a 12-foot fall, he falls 12 feet, and then he's good. There he is, he's down in the water, and then literally, I mean, the gorilla is on him right away, or around him right away, and at that point, everybody goes into, fear mode. As we heard on the video, the mom is yelling, all the other spectators are yelling, and even if the zoo did make some type of announcement, I think it would take an act of God to silence a crowd that is mentally preparing to watch this kid get pummeled. Do you know what I mean?
But that's why you need these programs in place. Like if you're gonna have that kind of enclosure, and something like that happens, and as a zoologist, like every time the crowd gets agitated, this gorilla's gonna get agitated. It's gonna risk the life of the child even more. You get your guys, your staff, and you push the people back, and you set up a perimeter where they can't directly influence the situation with their sounds and their sudden movements that are setting this gorilla off further. It's a lack of preparation on the zoo's part, and I feel like that's where they're at fault. But you mean to tell me that not just the mother, which, and it's, we don't have the mother's name, we don't have the child's name, they haven't released that, presumably because people are going to fucking go after her, just based on some of the backlash we've already seen. But not only her, but none of these people who are surrounding the enclosure see this kid climb between the bars and, crawl through the bushes and almost fall 12 feet before actually falling 12. Nobody sees this. Nobody thinks, hey, this kid's on the wrong side of the bars. I should stop this.
I mean, he may have been small enough, and there may have been a big enough crowd where he literally escaped notice. I mean, he's not a big kid. He's 3, and once you're through the bars and into the bushes, I mean, you're gone. You're gone if you look at the pictures. So he may have just been a really agile 3-year-old who very quickly managed to get through the bars and the bushes and fall, and then there's nothing anybody can do. Adults are afraid to fall 12 feet and jump in there. And I think if anyone had jumped in after him, I think that would have made things worse.
It would have made it much worse.
I think it's good that no one tried to be a hero. But you can't... It's a kid. If this were a grown man, if a grown man had jumped in there like we saw in the zoo in Chile a week or two ago with the 20-year-old who was suicidal and wanted to be mauled by lions, and I've read some other stories of like drunk people who fall in. At that point, give the animal some more time before you take a shot. They're adults, they're roughly aware of what they're doing, but this is a 3-year-old. We like to presume innocence on part of the kid, and I think there's a need to act more quickly. And when I saw this video, at first I thought, well, maybe the gorilla is protecting the kid, because you see him kind of have his arms around him generally, and then he kind of stands him up. But I was listening to an expert on one of the news stations, and he said when the gorilla picks him up, it's not to make sure he's standing or that he's okay. He said the gorilla's behavior was so that he could better figure out, like, what is this thing? And then he grabs the kid by the shirt and then drags him through the moat a second time. So, it's not like he picked him up and cradled him and was careful with him. He was pretty violent with the kid. It's not like he was being like parental to him. I mean, he picked him up, he dragged him, he stopped, he dragged him again over long distances, and I'm assuming it's concrete underneath the water, so it's a dangerous situation.
It is, but again, that goes back to like every time the gorilla acts violently in grabbing that kid and dragging him, it's in direct correlation with how the crowd is reacting to the situation, and it just amazes me that nobody realizes that in the moment. And I understand it's the heat of the moment, but we need to be more cognitively aware of things like that. But I mean, where do we go from here? Whose fault is this? Is it the zoo's fault? Is it the child's fault? Is it the parent's fault? Like, somebody needs to be blamed. And I'm not saying that from a personal opinion. I don't think anybody should be blamed. I think it's a shitty fucking situation that just needs to go away at this point because you can't change the past. It happened. It's done. It's over. But shit's gonna come from this. I guarantee you that the parent of that child is going to sue the zoo for some sort of emotional trauma.
Actually, the family came out today and said that they were not going to sue the zoo. There would be no lawsuit.
I don't believe that.
I hope there's not a lawsuit. I don't think there should be. If that fence has been in place for the last 40 years, and there's been no incident, then I'm willing to, as a parent, mark it up to this was an accident. It's past inspection. And I've got a kid who was determined to get in there, and he did. If it was negligence on her part, or she just lost track of him for a minute or two, then she probably shouldn't press any charges or try to file a lawsuit, because she should take some of the responsibility as well. But I don't think it's the kid's fault, because I don't think he's aware of what he's doing. I don't think it's the zoo's fault, because the fence is up to par and there hasn't been an incident. And the parent, I don't think, can be held accountable for the gorilla's death, because they didn't make the kid go in there, and accidents happen. You lose track of kids. I mean, we hear stories in the news all the time of like parents who like have their kid in the car and like they go to work and they just like have a lapse in like memory or judgment or whatever, and they accidentally leave their kid in a hot car and they just forget they're there. People do unfortunate things or forget things or lose track of things, and it's part of human nature. It's just we're flawed, and this mom lost track of her kid for a second, right? And there he goes. So I don't think she should be held responsible for this gorilla's death. I think it is a series of unfortunate events.
Well played.
Yeah.
I don't think that answer is, while I support that answer to a point, I don't think it's good enough for the general public, and I think until there's someone to blame, because that's who we are as people, you're going to see this thing drag on and on and on and on. You're going to have the animal rights activists fighting for the rights of that gorilla. You're going to have people fighting for the rights of the parent. You're going to have people shaming this parent and looking for her. Once her name is made public, there's going to be a shit ton of backlash on this woman, because it's amazing to me that there's like 40-something people sitting around this enclosure and nobody can tell definitively, was she on her phone, which is read in some articles? Was she with 6 kids or 0 kids, which is conflicted in some articles? Was she paying attention to the children or not paying attention to the children? In one of the articles, she was taking a selfie by herself with a selfie stick while 4 other children were under her care, and she had no idea where any of them were. So, I mean, who's getting this information? It's like they're not vetting this information before releasing it to the public in the first place, and it's causing this bit of hysteria and confusion. One article comes out with certain bits of information, people lose their fucking mind, go after the other group of people. 2 hours later, another article comes out with the exact opposite set of information, which gives the other people ammo to attack back, and it's like, what are we accomplishing with this?
I'm bothered. I'm really bothered by the fact that people somehow... I understand that there's a dead gorilla. I get it. I don't mean to minimize it, but it's a gorilla. It's not a human. It's not like... Some of this anger makes me feel like people are thinking, yeah, let the kid die. Let the kid die. Irresponsible parent, she deserves a dead kid. And I don't think anyone's saying that outright, but that's what it feels like. People are so mad that this gorilla is dead that it's almost like they'd rather the kid was dead and the headline is gorilla kills kid in zoo, rather than the headline be dead gorilla because kid falls into enclosure. And that it just bothers me, because you've got dangerous animals and they're inherently dangerous. They are. Most of the time, gorillas, these silverback gorillas, are very, they're usually not terribly aggressive, but they do intimidate, and when they are threatened, they're huge. They are 10 times more powerful than a human male. 10 times.
That's insane.
They can bench like 3,000 pounds. Like, think about it. It's insane. So, these gorillas, I mean... It wouldn't take much for this gorilla to kill this little kid. And whether the parent was negligent or not, no one should be hoping that this kid, not hoping, but no one should be saying, well, that kid's life should be forfeit and the gorilla be alive because maybe there was a lapse in judgment on the parent, or maybe the fencing really isn't adequate at the zoo. But this outrage that, like, and we'll get to the alternatives in a minute, but people are so angry that the gorilla's dead. It's like, do you want the kid dead? And do you feel that? Because that's what I'm getting through a lot of this outrage.
I do. I've had a lot of time to inwardly think about this, because I don't know where I stand. Like, I love animals, and I think that we're renting this planet that they own, as opposed to the other way around, and the way that we treat animals and how many we've made extinct. Like, there's a lot of fucked up shit humanity's done in terms of, like, preserving Earth. But that's separate. With this, I don't know. I don't know if I would sit here and say, well, that gorilla deserves to be alive, even if it means the life of that child, or no, they were right in what they did. It's one of the only times I've ever been conflicted about something. Usually, my mind makes itself up, and I'm like, all right, this is what should have happened. I agree or I disagree. And I don't know where I'm at with this one. I think because the bigger issue for me is zoos in the first place. Zoos, SeaWorld, aquariums. I'm not trying to, like, go on a rant about it, but it's really difficult because, again... If these things aren't here, and these animals are not out of their habitat, in a cage, constantly agitated, constantly mistreated, for our viewing entertainment and for a company's profit margin, these issues don't happen in the first place. Earlier you said that you find them educational and stuff like that. I know so much about so many animals that I've never seen in a zoo because I build an interest and I research it. You don't need to see the animal up close to do research about the animal. If you want to go down that career field and become a zoologist and then travel around studying animals in their natural habitat, that's great. But you're going to have two very different results if you're looking at, like, lions in the Serengeti and lions in fucking Cincinnati Zoo. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. I don't know where I'm at with it. I agree that there is definitely like more of an argument of like the gorilla should have lived or the child should have lived as opposed to anything else, but I don't think I could pick a side on that right now.
See, I find it impossible not to pick the kid side. It's impossible for me. It's like, if I'm confronted in another situation, it's like, you have to save this 3-year-old child or you have to save this 17-year-old gorilla. It's like, you gotta save the 3-year-old kid. A, he's younger, so he hasn't had a chance to live yet, and B, he's a human. Like, in any other situation. That would just be my mindset on it. And kids get in trouble. That's what they do. Little kids get in trouble. It's the terrible 2s and 3s, and this kid crawled through and ended up in a situation that most 3-year-olds don't end up in. But it doesn't mean he should die because he fell in. And I'm not saying that the gorilla should have died. If that gorilla sat there and either, kept some space from him or could be called off, I'd understand, if they had shot him then, why people would be upset. But he was violently dragging this kid around. And from the articles I've read, they called all the other gorillas in using trees and stuff like that. And Harambe was the only gorilla not to go in because he had this new toy to play with. You know what I mean? And or his curiosity was, so heightened about whatever this little creature was that he wouldn't be called in. So they tried to call him in. It doesn't work. He's right over the kid. You don't want to send someone else in close proximity because the gorillas charge and can be very deadly. So at that point, what are your alternatives? Your alternatives are wait it out and hope he just leaves the kid by himself to the point where the kid can be recovered. And then other people have said trank him. But everything I've read says, A, the tranks take 10 to 15 minutes to kick in. And if I hit a gorilla with a trank, that's pain. And then the gorilla's going to flip out one way or another. And what's the closest thing to him is the kid. If you could separate the gorilla from the kid a little bit and then maybe hit him with the trank and like distract him or something, then okay. But like he's standing right over this kid, so like you've called all the other gorillas away. He's not responding to treats. Like he's not gonna, the trank is just too risky. I don't know what other course of action you have other than to shoot him, because every second you wait is a second the kid could die, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, what would your alternative be? You're upset that he got shot. What would your alternative be?
No, I was actually going to say that while I am upset about the situation, I agree with you that tranquilizers would not have worked. They wouldn't have worked in any capacity simply because of everything you said. I mean, he's within like 3 feet of this kid. You know he's going to feel pain and it's going to agitate him. It's going to take 10 to 15 minutes to work. What if you had a trank that worked instantly? He's standing over this child. Do you know how much a fucking gorilla weighs? What if you trank it and he falls on the kid? Now the kid's dead anyway.
Right, exactly.
So I mean, like, could you have tased the gorilla? No. Yeah, you're not gonna have a taser that strong on hand. You know what I mean? You're talking like fucking like a taser tank maybe. But what are the alternatives? I can't think of any. Granted, I'm not an expert in the field, but like, could you drop a net on him? No, because you're going to drop a net on the kid too. You couldn't lure him away with treats. You couldn't lure him away with commands or calls. You're not going to be able to change something's... Gorillas are incredibly intelligent creatures. We are linked to them in several different ways in the theories of evolution. With a level of intelligence like that, if something falls into my enclosure, where everything is the same every day, and this new thing that makes sounds and moves on its own is now around me, I don't care what you're offering me on the other side of the enclosure, I'm paying attention to what's in front of me. So, I mean, what do? You shoot the gorilla.
Right. You have, because even if the second someone else steps into that enclosure, any type of close range, if the gorilla's already feeling semi-threatened by this new presence in his enclosure, if anyone else steps in there, now you're risking their lives as well. And then in that case, it's like, okay, well, I'd rather, have an adult die than a kid, but I'd rather have the gorilla die than both the adult and the child.
Right.
And that's just my speciesism coming out,
Fucking speciesist.
I am a speciesist. So I don't think there's an alternative here. I think it's really, really unfortunate. It sucks that it happened, but in these situations, I'm always a little bit surprised at how intense the outrage is, because I don't know that anybody would have made a different decision. And I think it's really tough for people to Monday morning quarterback situations like this, because most people that are complaining probably don't even know how to use a tranq gun. They probably don't know anything about the specifics, as in how much time does it take, where do I shoot them. So all these people are like, oh, tranq him, or all these other alternatives. And it's like, you're not a zookeeper. You're not an animal expert. You're not in a high pressure situation where even if you have some of that knowledge, you don't make the right decision. So it's really frustrating to me that you get these people like, oh, they killed the gorilla, I'm so upset, they never should have shot the gorilla. It's like, it's really easy for you to say that. Like, good for you. Good for your moral standing that you wouldn't have shot the gorilla. No one wanted to shoot this gorilla. It's not like they got like 5 hunters like waiting in the back like, oh, I paid $5,000 to kill the next gorilla. You know, like, it's not like that's what's going on. They're really upset that they had to shoot the gorilla at that zoo. The people who take care of it love taking care of them, loved interacting with them. They don't want to lose animals. So it bothers me that people think that they know better than the people who had to essentially put one of their own down.
I think what bugs me more than anything is that these same people are the ones that are criticizing and insulting and like bashing on these zookeepers and zoologists and like the staff who are involved in the situation. If you go and look at any of the interviews that have been taken of these people, you can see the pain in their face. Some of them have broke down on camera because of what happened. Like, this isn't an easy situation. It wasn't an easy decision for any of them. For most of these people who go into these fields, these animals are their family, and you might as well shoot your own child. And that's what bugs me, is that these heartless bastards are out there abusing the unfortunate events of a situation to push an agenda and project that negativity onto people who didn't have a choice. And these are the same people who always, like you said, you know, oh, well, I would have done it differently. They're the same people who are like, I could have convinced that suicidal guy not to jump off that tower better than the hostage negotiator did. Even though he's got years and years of experience and I have none, I would have done it differently. They're all Donald Trumps. All of them. They're all Donald Trumps.
Well, but I think to some extent, no one's really blaming the zoo, right? Like, everyone thinks that they should know better, and they seem upset that an alternative wasn't used, but then they don't get mad at the zoo, they're mad at the mother. Because I think on some level they understand, like, hey, there's not much you could do there. I would have done it differently, maybe used a tranquilizer, but ultimately, let's be pissed at the mom. This is the mom's fault. This is bad parenting, blah, blah, blah. And we don't have all the facts on that. We don't have all the facts. And even if it was a moment of negligence, this could be the best mom in the world. That's the thing. Like, she might be the best mother out there. She might take care of her kids better than anybody else and had a momentary lapse in judgment or attention, and there goes her kid, and she's going to receive death threats. If her name becomes public,
and it will,
people are going to... they're going to send death threats, and they're going to hold her accountable over the loss of this gorilla. And in that way, it's really, I think it's a little bit heartless. Her child could have died. Don't you think she knows that? Don't you think she's the most aware person on the planet? And aren't you, I mean, she's got to feel remorse. She has to feel remorse for the loss of the gorilla too. And a lot of times I feel like that's got to be punishment enough, right? Do you really need to send her death threats? Well, I don't think so. I don't think that needs to happen.
Worse than that is the police are... she's currently being investigated for negligence. Was this something that could have been avoided had she been a better parent? I mean, if she's found guilty of that and this goes to court, you're talking about a woman who almost lost her child and is now being charged criminally for what happened. I mean... if she's found negligent, and we don't know, we don't have all of the answers, so I'm not going to sit here and say she was or wasn't, I'm not going to badmouth her, but if she is found negligent, she's going to be facing enough trouble in the legal system alone for this shitty situation that she doesn't need these people sending death threats and harassing her. And you're talking about a woman who's probably going to have to move once her name becomes public. She's going to have to up and change her life entirely because everyone's going to know who she is. And that's the shitty part of humanity. Like... We see the compassion in animals all the time and we advocate for it. Why can't humans be more like these creatures who are loving and thoughtful and all this and this and this? Why can't we emulate that right now in a time where something very terrible has happened and just appreciate the fact that a child is still alive and let the mother grieve over the situation herself. Because, yeah, her child's still alive, but she knows she's directly responsible for that 17-year-old endangered gorilla's death. She doesn't need your reminders. She doesn't need your harassment. You're not helping anybody with anything you're doing. Don't be a fucking asshole.
Don't be an asshole.
I think that's all I have to say about this.
That's our episode for today. Please feel free to weigh in on comments or text, whatever, because we can always revisit this. Happy Wednesday.
Holy shit, it's Wednesday?
Yeah, it's a short week. Happy vacation. Wednesday. This has been the Coffee Milk Hour. I'm Jerry.
I'm Puffy, and we'll see you guys Friday.